Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and get started with our part 3 of NASA Senior Issue Committee Presents. At the beginning, my name is Lonnie Martin, and I work in the NASA corporate office as the Deputy Director of Events, Education, and Membership. It's always my pleasure to be a host of these webcasts. These webcasts are provided by the NASA Professional Development Committee, and in this case, the NASA Board of Directors level Senior Issues Committee. So we thank everyone for joining our webcast. Today's webcast is going to be 40 minutes. We do ask that you fully participate by asking questions of the speaker by typing your questions into the Q&A feature at the bottom of the page. If you have any technical problems, please send them in the chat, and I will be happy to respond to you in the chat. When asking a question of the speaker, please avoid disclosing confidential, privileged, or non-public information. Our views expressed by speakers on our webcast are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of NASA, their organizations, unless they specifically state that they are. Now, without further ado, our webcast today, Build Knowledge and Gain Confidence, Empowering Women on Their Investment Journey, begins with our first speaker, Andrew Hartnett. Andrew, welcome to the screen. Andrew is the co-chair of the Seniors Issues Committee. I'll now turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lonnie. So today, welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is the third in a three-part series focused on women as investors. And this program came about because, on the Senior Issues Committee, we have an advisory committee. And as I was talking to folks on that advisory committee, several of them said, women are more vulnerable than men. And that was a provocative idea to me. As I talked to them more, I was aware that, statistically speaking, women make less than men, or, that they're more likely to leave the workforce for caregiving responsibilities. But I hadn't made the link in my head that translated into more vulnerability. And so we wanted to explore that concept to give oxygen to that notion. And so this three-part web series, of which this is the third, is what resulted from that. And in the first one, we sort of explored that concept of vulnerability. That was 2 weeks ago, and talked neurology and also about those vulnerabilities we were just talking about in terms of leaving the workforce, and also got into things like confidence and some of the things that I think Chelsea's going to talk about today. One of the reasons for that nice parallel is that one of our panelists in the first one was Greg Lyle of the Innovative Research Group, and Greg is the one who has conducted a lot of the research for British Columbia that on which today's presentation is based. So there's a nice symmetry to the presentations. Last week's presentation was about sort of how is the financial services industry, how are securities firms responding to the trend of women having more money, but women being sometimes a different kind of investor than men. So that was last week. If you weren't able to watch any of those, they are available on the NASA website. So if you couldn't catch them live and they're still of interest, please do go back and watch them. And so today, is the next step in our three-part series: Build Knowledge and Gain Confidence, Empowering Women on Their Investment Journey. And I'm really pleased to introduce Chelsea Seiler. She is the manager of investor education and outreach in British Columbia, and is going to walk through some of that research and how it informed the way in which they reach out to women, and also how it informed an online guide for women investors. So enough from me. Let's actually hear from Chelsea. Chelsea, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I'm really pleased to be here today to discuss the BC Securities Commission Women in Investing resource. And I have to second what Andrew was saying. I really enjoyed the first two pieces of this series, and I'm very pleased to be here with part 3, and I hope you've enjoyed the first 2 sessions. I know I have as well, and if you didn't watch them, as Andrew said, you can go back and check them out. So I'm coming to you from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. It's actually not raining behind me, which is unusual. We're about a 4-hour drive north of Seattle. Like many securities regulators, our goal at the BC Securities Commission is to empower investors. We want them to protect their financial interests. We want them to become better informed about investment products and services. And we do this through education. We provide unbiased investing information, tools, resources through our investor education website, which is investright.org. To further support our goal, we use InvestRight as the core of our digital marketing campaigns that are aimed at providing British Columbians the knowledge they need to achieve good investment outcomes. Today, I'm going to be talking primarily about our Women in Investing resource, how we developed it. Like everything at the BCSC, it was founded in research, and we were great to hear from Greg Lyle in session 1, and I'm going to walk you through some of that research and how it informed this resource. We'll talk about some of the subject matter experts here at the Commission that were involved in the creation of the tool, and we'll walk through the website itself, and as well as talk about how we continue to engage our audience, as it's been a 1.5 years since we launched the resource and it's still going strong. As I mentioned, everything we do at the Securities Commission is rooted in research. So building a resource specifically for women was not something we selected out of the air or felt like it was something we needed to do. No, we looked at nearly 10 years of research about British Columbians and Canadians. This research informed our work, telling us how British Columbians and Canadians thought, acted, and felt about investing. And it became very clear, looking at the research, that women and men invest differently. So as an organization with a goal to empower British Columbians and their investments, it's important that we address this gap and make sure that our tools are empowering for both men and women. So let's review some of that foundational research and talk about how it informed our Women in Investing resource. So women's investment goals are no different from men. We asked people to think about savings and investments that they have set aside for their future and what goals are they currently working towards. So there are not significant gender differences among men and women when it comes to investment goals. As you can see, both are working towards primarily retirement, vacation or travel, and paying down debt. However, focusing on retirement is imperative for women. Women have to plan for a longer retirement because they tend to outlive men by an average of 4 years. And as Andrew mentioned, women are also more likely to take parental leave, which can lead to financial or professional setbacks. So we knew in building this resource that looking at retirement in terms of investing was going to be a key focus point. Women are less likely to describe themselves as an investor. So let's look at this. We asked respondents to tell us how well certain terms describe them. And maybe you can think about this for yourself. On a scale of 0 to 10, how well does the word investor describe you? On the screen, you see some data, and these are folks who answered that the word investor described them at either a 7, 8, 9, or 10 out of 10. So as you can see, the dark green line, men are more likely to describe themselves as an investor. Now, why does this even matter? Well, it really matters because identifying as an investor is a key piece of planning for your financial future. Knowing yourself as an investor means you're more likely to be involved in your investment plan and pay attention to resources. Note, we're not talking about whether people are investors. It's whether they see themselves as investors. And I wanted to mention something called the red car theory. And when you leave this resource today, I want you to think about and look around and see if you see any red cars. If red cars weren't on your brain, would you notice them? Probably not. But now that I've mentioned it, I bet you're going to notice red cars. And so that's kind of the angle that we take when making sure that we want all British Columbians, including women, to see themselves as an investor. And I noticed that someone has asked if the slides are going to be made available, and they will be made available on the NASA website. Next, women invest with less confidence, less enjoyment, and less optimism. Okay, I promise this does turn around, but let's focus on these for a second. So we've got 4 investing attitudes here. And when it comes to investing, confidence is key. Now, over time, so over these 8 to 10 years that we have been looking at research, confidence is rising among women. However, they still feel less confident than men when it comes to making investment decisions. So the very left column there, we see 59% of women in the lime green say they're confident, whereas 78% of men say the same. Even with that rise in confidence over time, women still feel more anxiety about losing money on their investments, with 51% saying they're anxious. And they are less optimistic than men that they will be able to achieve their investment targets. On the last note, women also have lower financial knowledge than men. So the lime green being higher means that women have lower financial knowledge. So 56% have low financial knowledge compared to 38% of men. We're going to come back to that in a minute. I want to mention that hesitation and that instinct to pause if you're feeling anxious or less optimistic can sometimes be a good thing. Take, for example, that men are more likely to be speculative investors. That's a behavior that's correlated with higher risk. Among women, we see consistently less speculative type investing behavior. Women also periodically gain higher returns because they tend to avoid high-risk trends, they can stay calm amid volatility, and they tend to take a more passive approach to investing. So while it's true, it wouldn't hurt women to gain more confidence when it comes to investing, we also don't need to be overconfident because we already have good instincts when it comes to making smart investment decisions. And overconfidence can sometimes lead to those high-risk behaviors. So we knew our resource would need to focus on building up these attitudes, especially investing confidence. And you can build on investing confidence by getting comfortable with the idea of risk. Now, I mentioned we were going to talk about the financial knowledge piece. So let's dig into that for a second. Our data shows that women have lower financial knowledge. But let's dig in. So what you see here are 5 questions about financial literacy and knowledge. And I know there's a lot of colors and there's a lot of bars, but let me break it down. Respondents were asked 5 true or false questions. Dark green is true, lime green is false, and blue is I don't know. So men do answer correctly more often than women, which leads us to say that women have lower financial knowledge. However, the key here is that women are more likely to say don't know than answer incorrectly. So women have more of that dark blue line overall. Now, do they really not know, or is that the confidence piece coming up again? Again, this research tells us this lack of knowledge can be correlated with being less confident and more risk averse. So that's the basis research that we looked at to build the resource. Let's talk about the resource itself. So our Women in Investing Guide is an online guide for women. It lives on our website, investright.org. Our content strategy focused on increasing confidence in women by increasing investment knowledge. And I noticed someone in here said men are afraid to admit they don't know. you have a point there. Now, increasing that confidence in women was accomplished by weaving in already existing knowledge and resources that we have on investright.org. So for those of you in the audience who may be thinking about building a resource for women, a lot of the data that we put on the site and a lot of the tools we put on the site, we already had for regular British Columbians. However, we've presented them in a way that speaks to women. The target audience for this resource is BC women of all backgrounds between the ages of 15 to 60 plus. That's a pretty big range, we know, but it ensures we include folks from emerging adults all the way to pre-retirees and retirees. And we wanted to make sure that the content, tone, and style of the site is empowering, is supportive, and informative. So let's take a look at a few pieces of the guide. And we begin with a section called Know Yourself. This goes back to the research. We talk about the importance of understanding who you are as an investor and how you can identify as an investor. We talk about the importance of knowing this and its contribution to financial independence. Now, knowing yourself is not just calling yourself an investor or identifying as an investor. It's also understanding your personal risk tolerance, your goals, who you are when it comes to things like choosing investments. Knowing this helps not only dictate your investment plan and your financial futures, but it can also build up defenses against online pitches, potential fraud, and high-risk investments. We also asked women here at the BCSC about their investing experience. So on the site, you can see stories from staff about their own investment journeys. We know everyone's investment journey is different, but we wanted to show it rather than tell it. And we highlighted that by talking to people about perhaps mistakes they made when they were younger or things they wish they knew when they got started investing. We kept these pieces anonymous. It was less about the person and more about the insight. So, for example, this particular staff member talked about they didn't get started early because they felt like they didn't have enough money. And that goes back to the idea of seeing yourself as an investor at any age and people thinking that investing is for people who have more money than them. We also talk about how to invest, and this is actually a really big piece of what we do in our public education. On investright.org, one of our main goals is teaching people the options they have when it comes to investing. If you were to look on the internet right now, you may get some guidance about how to get rich quick. You may be told what stock is about to go to the moon, but we know that to be a long-term investor, you should know the difference between using a registered investment advisor, doing it yourself, or using a robo-advisor. So we give folks options. You can watch a video if that's your preferred route. You can read. We always want people to understand as well the role that the securities regulator plays. Pardon me for one moment. So we cover things like client-focused reforms and how we handle conflicts of interests. I'm sure many people on this call know how much information is out there that feels incorrect, feels misleading, feels wrong. And so this is an opportunity for us as a regulator to come out as an authority who is unbiased and simply state the facts. We want to allow investors and we want to allow women to make their own informed decisions. Now, I also want to remind you that Q&A is here. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to pop them in. I'll see them come up right away and I'd love to have a discussion on them. We recognize, as I mentioned, that women as an audience is an extremely large bucket. And so a emerging adult or teenage investor would not have the same goal as an investor in their 40s, their 50s, approaching retirement, etc. So you'll see we've created this accordion style menu. so that the audience can select the age group relevant to them to build knowledge and gain confidence to make informed decisions at this stage in your life. And I guess one thing I'd be interested to hear from the audience is there something that you wish you had known when you started investing? Or was there something that you wish you could go back and change about your investing journey? I'd love to hear what you think. If you'd like to type it in the Q&A, and as mentioned at the top, try not to put any confidential information in there, but it's really interesting to hear from people when you get in these conversations. You know, sometimes someone will say, oh my goodness, I really believed in this company, and so I invested my first $100 into them and didn't do any research, and we'll never see that $100 again. And it's really good to start talking about this and just understand that we're all here on this investment journey. We all have similar goals, as it said at the beginning, with retirement, vacations, etc. So if you're comfortable with it, I'd love to hear what some of your learnings are in the Q&A. So we built the resource. It's on the website, investorite.org. How do we get it to women in British Columbia? So one thing we use is social media, which is unsurprising. We know that women, again, through research, use social media. And we know that a lot of women in British Columbia use social media to gain information about investing. So the resource was built and we opened up social media ads just to get the word out. We used really simple, dynamic, colorful ads to click through to the resource. These were designed by an advertising agency, and social media allows for all the difficulties that social media can sometimes provide when it comes to getting accurate information. It does allow us to target our ads to women in a specific geographic region. So in our case, British Columbia. And we could even get hyper-focused on women who are interested in investing, or maybe someone who's not clicking around on investing information, but is interested in buying a home or looking how to pay down debt. And maybe some information about investing would be helpful for that person. The nice thing about setting up a social media campaign, for those of you who might be thinking about sharing a resource like this, is that you have the ability to tweak it, repeat it if you like, and we have data on what messages are most clicked on, what images lead to click-throughs, etc. For example, the color on the left that you see, the blue, tends to lead to more click-throughs, which is pretty fascinating insight. One of our attendees mentioned that it would have been nice to start their 401k contributions earlier, but I guess it's never too late. And I'm sure that that is a sentiment shared by many. Here in Canada, we have things called RRSPs that is similar to 401k. And I think a lot of Canadians as well feel there's a lot of room there, but are they maximizing their contributions? It is never too late to start. And the beauty of time is that compound interest is there for you no matter when you start. And it's important to talk about that. And one thing we don't want to do is alienate someone who says, well, I understand that starting early is best. And I understand that I should have done this when I was 25. I'm not that anymore. Is there even any point? And of course, there is a point. There's always a good time to start planning for your financial future. What is that phrase of the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, but the second best time to plant a tree? I think that suits here. We also learned through research that our audience uses YouTube, and I'm sure many of you in the audience here as well go on YouTube for information about anything. I used YouTube last night to try and fix my closet door. I was unsuccessful, but that's not what we're here for. We went on YouTube and hosted what we called an online masterclass. So we've actually hosted 2 of these since our resource launched. This is the section of the presentation where I start talking about things we've done, and my face is on the screen twice, so please bear with me. My coworker Malka, who organized this deep dive of the research, also was there to co-present with me. And similar to how I'm speaking with you today, we covered the research, we covered some of insights, and made the masterclass, while it was presented live, available on our YouTube channel as well as on the Women in Investing resource. In the masterclass, we want people to understand that sometimes investing can look boring. And it's a bit of a different angle than going online and seeing a guy on TikTok talking about how this crypto is going to take you to the moon, that investing is for everyone, investing looks different for everyone, and it should and can match your own risk tolerance and your own goals. And someone mentioned they wish they had maximized contributions and not touched them. And I think that's a very common sentiment. And, we talked about knowing yourself as an investor, and part of that is knowing what mistakes you've made, because nobody's perfect. So you can chalk that up as a learning and carry on knowing you're a more informed investor now. I'm going to pause for about a minute with our continuing education code. So for those of you who would like to use the continuing education code, here it is, 387594. So I'll just give you some time to write that down or take a screenshot if you like. We also had someone mention that they wish they had learned about employer matching 401k contributions and learning that pensions still exist and what that means. That's a really interesting point. And I'm just going to leave this CE code up a little bit longer to make sure that all those who need it can get it. There we go. Because someone has mentioned pensions, an interesting piece of research that I'm currently working on at the BCSC looks at a pension gap in Canada. And I completely agree with this person who mentioned that we need to understand that pensions still exist, because sometimes people don't understand what they mean, that they have one, or what happens when you take leave. So for example, if you take parental leave, what happens to your pension? These are all really important things that we don't often talk about. So really important as well. Now, in our quest to connect our resource with the right people, we found that connecting with special interest groups is really, really important. We do not have a direct line to every special interest group that centers around women in British Columbia. We wish we did, but we made some partnerships with those that do exist. So for example, in Vancouver, there's an organization called Lean In. You may be familiar with the book Lean In, and these organizations are across the world. They have these smaller groups called circles that largely exist separately from the book and the author of the book now, but they're groups of women that have shared interests. And in Vancouver, it's not a financial interest group. It tends to be a lot of tech workers, because that's an industry that exists here. So we had a really great opportunity to connect with Lean In, who shared our resources with their audience. We spoke to their audience. And again, it's really great to start talking about women and investing in a context outside of, we're here to talk about money. Investing can reach people across careers, across ages, etc. Okay. Now, the other thing we do is we have digital communications, and this is another way that we reach people. And, again, the research is telling us people like to receive information on social media. So while we have investright.org as our website, we know that sometimes getting to a website can be a little bit tricky. If you're scrolling through your feed, you want to be able to get the information right in the feed. So we have a really wonderful team who use the information that we have, and we call it Trojan horsing. So they put in a little bit of education about fraud warning signs, about women in investing, about some of our research, and present it in a bit of a fun way. So you can get a little tidbit of that. And I'll expand on those trends in a minute. We also have an email newsletter on investright.org that we send out once a month. I think it's important, just like investing, that you can diversify. So in investing, we talk about diversification. as a group that wants to reach British Columbians and reach women, we really want to make sure that we don't only go down one channel. So we use social media, we use an email newsletter, we use connecting with special interest groups, etc. And hopefully we can connect with people. But I thought I'd just take some time and share one of the trends that we recently participated in. You may recall a very famous pygmy hippo named Mudang. So think about Mudang and think about what I talked about off the top here about knowing that you're an investor. Well, once you know you're an investor, you also want to know what type of investor you are. So understanding whether you're reserved, whether you're confident, whether you're impulsive, etc. And this is a quiz you can take on investright.org that will help you understand what type of investor you are. But we used this, I think, adorable pygmy hippo to get the word out that there are different types of investors, just like Mudang had different moods. Now, if anyone in the audience has some trend that they have seen that they think we should be taking advantage of, feel free to pop it in the chat. I'm always interested to hear what other people are seeing, and we want to make sure that we can deliver the information to you in a way but we really in British Columbia want to make sure we're connecting with people who choose to consume content in a language other than English. For a lot of people who speak more than one language, it's sometimes more comfortable to consume content in perhaps their first language. And so we have content in 7 different languages. And again, we use social media to connect with people in their language and direct them to the content in their own language. Finally, I mentioned that this resource has been live for over a year now, almost a year and a half. And we want to make sure it continues to be out there. We want to make sure that people are still paying attention to it. And sometimes as communicators, I won't speak for everyone, but I'll speak for myself. We say, well, we've done that thing. It's, what's new? Nothing's new. But we want to make sure that we continue to put this out. So we use ongoing engagement to talk to people. And as you know, NASAA has been doing a great job through the month of March, focusing on women and investing. At the beginning of the month, we had International Women's Day. And so we posted a video that featured staff. You may recognize our CEO, Brenda Leong, talking about our research and talking about investing. And just a reminder to people that those stories are out there and the resources here for everyone. Now, I'm just going to say something to Lonnie because I can't see the Q&A anymore. So if we do have Q&As, Lonnie, if you could either drop them in the chat or just jump in and interrupt me, that would be helpful. Okay, so we're getting to the end here. And again, please feel free to drop in those questions or thoughts. It's really great to hear from you. I want to talk a little bit about the results of putting this campaign out there because, of course, measuring things is key. After that initial push where we published the resource and our masterclass and made these online connections, the Women in Investing resource on investright.org became the 2nd most popular page on our website. And in fact, the most popular page was a landing page, which almost doesn't count. So we know that the interest is there. There are women there who want this information. We saw web traffic continue steadily. So what it seems like is people had either bookmarked the resource or planned to come back to it. And, we're reaching out to the same special interest groups again, just to remind people, like, it's still time to talk about investing. It's still a good time to have these conversations. And as someone in the chat mentioned, they had wished they had done this sooner. Well, now's a good time to start. So we did that. And, for anyone wanting to do a similar resource, I would just say to continue to talk about it because it definitely helps. And then finally, of course, what we really want is empowered investors in British Columbia, in Canada, across North America. And we've received really good feedback from folks who appreciate the resource, who use the resource and feel like it's tailored for them. And that is the ultimate win. So that is it for me. And it looks like there are no more questions. So I will sign off now and say thank you so much. And